our launch events. Thanks for the recording. Welcome to the launch event of October. So today our topic is winning with product pricing. A very interesting topic, so looking forward to this. And so my name is Xandra. I'm in BPMA, part of the team that is organizing events. We have also Nasran here and Hillary, who also are in the events team, and we want to welcome you here today. So today the topic is winning with product pricing, but before we get started, first a quick introduction of what BPMA is and who we are. So we are the leading professional association in Greater Boston region, and we are dedicated to the career development of product management and product marketing professionals. So what we do is we provide very interesting content. We do mentorship, we have a job board, and we organize events, for example, like this one, this lunch event, and we also have regularly in-person events in the Boston area. And please check out our website for more information on all of this. So a quick also thank you to our sponsors. We have Pragmatic Institute, NDT, the Product Board, and many more sponsors of BPMA. I would recommend to check them out. They have a lot of information and value to offer. So we have a few events planned. So today we are talking about product pricing. The next month we have the topic will be product marketing. Also interesting, is already online. You can sign up for it. And November 14th, there's an in-person event in Boston as well, where several product organizations join forces together. And that will be a very interesting one. So if you live in the area, I would recommend to sign up for it as well. And for December, the topic still needs to be announced. Also keep an eye on the newsletter. If there's new events, you will always find them there as well. So before we get started, a few guiding principles. We encourage you, but don't require you to have the cameras on. We encourage you to do networking. Please use the chat for it. Feel free to share your name, maybe your LinkedIn profile as well. Also use the chat just to ask questions as we go. Feel free to do that. That's fine, and we'll try to answer them during the event. So let me introduce today's speakers. We have here in this event Neil and Hans. So both of them have so much knowledge and experience on product pricing. So they're going to tell you more about this. I'm really happy to have you guys here. So thank you for being here and giving us all this information. So I'll just give the floor to you, and please introduce yourselves and let's get started. Let's dive in.
Sounds great. Let me just do the share here, and just bear with me for a second. So everybody can see my screen here?
Yes.
And once again, the preference is to have cameras on. But we totally understand if for technical reasons that's not feasible. But as Xandra said, we're all about building a community. And the way we build a community is for us to get to know each other and see who we are. And it's a lot harder to do that off camera than on. So once again, totally up to you, but we prefer cameras on. The topic today is all about pricing and how to move from tactical pricing to more strategic pricing. And this is something that's absolutely critical to the success of product management and product marketing teams, yet so few organizations really do it well. So during this session, we're going to outline the 5 key steps that you have to think about to become more strategic in your pricing. I'd also like to introduce my friend and colleague and co-presenter, Hans. If you can just say hello and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself.
Yeah, Hannes Migefirke, my name. I'm leading a portfolio marketing organization at a technology company. You can see in my LinkedIn. And I'm since over 10 years, I'm working on pricing a lot in different roles, and I thought it is very valuable for everybody to share. So, and Neil and I put together really good stuff to talk about, to prime a little bit where to start, and I hope it will help you.
Yeah,
And we
my
will
name
go
is,
later into.
yeah,
So,
thanks, Hans.
go ahead.
And my name is Neil Barron. For many, many years, I was in your shoes as a product manager. I've led product teams, I've led innovation teams, I've led services teams. And in 2009, I recognized there was a need to help primarily B2B organizations implement product marketing and product management best practices. So I launched a consulting firm, Barron Strategic Partners, in 2009. So let's get into our topic about how to become a strategic pricing hero within your organization. First, let's get into why does pricing matter? Why is it important to you in your organization, in your role? You can raise your hand, you can put something in the chat. Okay, well, pricing, you got to make money to continue the business, need margin, absolutely. And once again, pricing is one of the most powerful levers that we have as product people to determine the profitability and the growth of our product. So similarly, why does pricing matter to you, but also why is it so hard? Why are we all taking the time out of our busy days to come here and talk about pricing? If it was easy, everybody could do it. Yeah, I can't absolutely a lot of considerations. Feel free to raise your hand. We want this to be interactive. We can use the chat. Justin, good to see you again. So when you say fear of losing business, what is that all about?
Yeah, it's the uncertainty that, could you overprice and actually lose deals? I think that's a common thing you hear.
Yeah. Okay. And so overpriced meaning charging too much. Is that what that is?
Yeah, I think that's a common story that you hear from, guys in the field who are in these competitive deals, right? I think it's a convenient excuse often.
Yeah. Okay. So, you find that, by the way, when you ask salespeople why they lose a deal, price is the number one reason. Product is probably number two. And I've never seen in doing hundreds of interviews with salespeople in terms of why deals were lost. No salesperson has ever said that they were outsold. So yeah, price is often the scapegoat for lost deals. And in terms of value to the customer, actually, Alex, I know you and I have had discussions about this offline. Absolutely, we're going to get into this here. Before we do, before I tell you a story about pricing, Zandra or Hillary, if you could launch a couple of polls because we'd like to get to know you better. So the first poll is what products do you sell? Are you in software, hard goods, services, or all of the above?
Can you see the poll results come in, Neil?
I can start to see the
Okay,
poll results
cool.
come in, yes. So it looks like the vast majority of you are in, like almost 3/4 are in software. SaaS is also a big area as well. So it's software and SaaS. It's also interesting. I'm on the board along with Zandra and Hillary of the BPMA, and we're constantly looking at who our customers are, such as you folks. So this is helpful to know and helpful to see. And once again, the vast majority are B2B software. And we have a nice mix of levels here. So we'll do that as well. So let's get into the story. So I had a run-in a few years back with a squirrel, and I got to tell you, I learned a lot from that squirrel about pricing. And so the story is that this is the back of my house. I happen to be in Needham, Mass. I know most of you are in the Boston area. And one of the best parts of our house was the porch. And it was a 3-season porch, and we absolutely loved the porch. We would play games on the porch. We'd eat meals on the porch. We'd entertain on the porch. We would just have a great time at the porch. And for 9 months of the year, the porch was a super important part of our life. Then one day, the porch began to smell, and it was one of the worst smells we've ever smelled. It was gag-worthy smell. And to top it off and to make it even worse, there were a ton of flies all over the place. It was awful. And so no one wanted to go anywhere near the porch. We were convinced, as my mother-in-law said, the porch was absolutely ruined. And now those of you who are married know that your mother-in-law is always right, and she's an expert on everything. And so I was freaking out that, gee, if she was right, we'd have to tear down the porch to get rid of the smell, rebuild it. And I'm looking at potentially, what, a $40,000 investment in order to get a new porch back. So one of my neighbors said, well, maybe you have a pest problem. Maybe you should call a pest removal company. So we called the local pest removal company, NW Pest, over in Waltham. Not a commercial for them, but they are very good. And they said they'll charge $125 to remove it, but there was no charge if they were not successful. So they de-risked the whole process here. And they came, and this guy Bob showed up with a very long pole that was made out of aluminum. He had a light that was very powerful, and he had a very strong white plastic bag. And within minutes, he was gone. He said there was a squirrel that was in the bag, and he said that your porch would go back to normal within a day or so. And he was absolutely right. But one thing he didn't say, he didn't tell me about the pole. He didn't tell me about how much light was emitted from the lamp. He didn't talk about the tensile strength of the bag. All he did was come and remove that god-awful smell. And so we got our lives back. So we spent $125 for that visit, but it was fabulous. We were ecstatic. At the same time, if you looked at just on the time that he spent, he was there for less than 5 minutes. And if you do the math, we're looking at $1,500 or more per hour, which is outrageous. On the other hand, I was ecstatic. So the question for the group is, you can put it in the chat, or you can just raise your hand. Why was I so happy when I spent the equivalent of $1,500 for something? Yes, Stephanie, absolutely. The problem was solved. Any other reasons here? What were the implications of solving that problem? Well, one thing is I avoided, Yeah, Destin, absolutely. It's way less than a new porch. No need to spend 40K. That was the alternative that I was looking at. That was the competition, $40,000, or calling the pest company. It was a no-brainer to spend $1,500 an hour to get the squirrel removed. But one thing I didn't look at and say, gee, boy, that was one heck of an aluminum pole that he used. Or boy, I was so impressed with the tensile strength of his bag. I didn't get into, gee, he looks like he's been doing this for many years. Or boy, he's licensed or he's insured. All the things that we as B2B marketing and product managers really get excited about. I didn't care about any of that. And yet, right next door to me is my neighbor, Steve. He lives in a very similar house, similar square footage. My backyard happens to be a little bit bigger. He has two kids that are a little bit older than mine. I also have two kids. He likes rock music. I like rock music. So if you looked at a lot of the characteristics of myself and my neighbor, and we look at things that we call personas, the personas are almost identical. And yet there's no way he would hire the pest company. There's no way he'd spend $125 or $1,500 an hour for one simple reason. He doesn't have the problem that I did. He doesn't have the smell coming from his porch that I did. And yet, as product marketing folks, product management, we spend a ton of time thinking about personas, and we end up missing the boat completely. In some ways, we could say that our personas lie to us. They distract us from the main point, the main differentiation between those who buy and those who don't. Those who are willing to pay a premium price like I did, to those who won't buy even if you discount. So part of the question I'd like to ask the group here is, what customer dead squirrels does your product remove? You can put it in the chat, you can raise your hand, but are you aware, can you articulate what those dead squirrels are? Those problems that are so smelly, so awful, that people are willing to pay a lot of money to buy right now. Any thoughts? Well, I'll say right here, if you can't do this, either to yourself or to your teammates and your colleagues, it's going to be very hard to price strategically. What we're talking about here is absolutely foundation to the successful pricing of your products. And if we had more time, we get into what is the impact to your customer or removing the dead squirrels. But I also want to introduce a concept called the benefit experience. This was a concept that was introduced by Professor Lynn Phillips of Harvard and Stanford Business School and his colleague Michael Lanning back in the 1980s, where they developed the concept of value proposition and really started to write about customer value based on work they were doing with Southwest Airlines, Apple, and HP. And what they discussed was that customers are really buying what they called a benefit experience. It's an experience that provides some benefit to them and is really articulated as an event. Something happens, it's measurable. You could have an emotional impact. You could have a psychological impact. You could have a financial impact or other impact that has an impact on the customer's life. It's all about improving the life. That's why I told you the dead squirrel story, because I wasn't buying the pole, I wasn't buying the truck, I wasn't buying his license. I was buying and paying for the experience of getting that god-awful smell away from my house. Once again, if they told me, well, bring a pole and a bag, I wasn't really caring about that. I just wanted to know, would my problem be solved? And so, yet we often confuse benefit experiences with something else. We end up using substitutes such as we have a global reach, and we'll show a picture of our offices. We'll talk about how long we've been in business. We'll talk about how smart our people are. We'll talk about our products, our features. We'll talk about the aluminum pole. But we totally miss the boat. If we talk about this stuff, we end up in commodity land. We end up in discount land. If we talk about the benefit experiences, this is really where we can value price and price much more strategically. And so this is really hard. Why? Because we think we know the market. We may talk to internal folks. We may read an analyst report, but we really don't know for sure what's going on. And so we end up winging it. Another psychological factor that gets in our way is the curse of knowledge. This was a psychological phenomenon identified at Stanford University in the early 90s. And basically it says we're too smart for our own good. Basically, if you're an expert, and once you become an expert, it becomes very difficult to think like a non-expert and to be able to communicate. So we understand what our jargon is, we understand what our features are, but our customers don't, and we assume they do. In the real world example or real life example, if you ever taught somebody how to drive, or you had to explain to somebody how to make a right turn, simple as a right turn. If I was sitting next to Dustin, we would continue talking and I'd tell him to make a right turn and it'd be great. He'd do it. If I was talking to a 16-year-old who just got their learner's permit and told them to make a right turn, they couldn't do it. It's way too complicated. And you think about it, all the steps that go into making a right turn. And so we often end up as victims of the curse of knowledge when we try to talk about our products, when we think about our price, and once again, we end up in commodity land, and we end up having to discount far too much to win deals. So because of this, because of the Mark Twain phenomenon, we end up pricing based on a methodology called BOBSAT. This stands for a bunch of people sitting around a table. Very internally focused, very limited data, but we go ahead and price and we wing it that way. So we talked about strategic pricing. Well, strategic pricing is all about maximizing long-term profitability. It's all about looking at pricing on a continuum between where the bottom is your cost, you can't go below that, to what the total value you are. So in some cases, you could say NW Pest could price anywhere up to $39,999, and that would have been reasonable given the fact if my mother-in-law was right, and my only alternative was to spend $40,000, $39,999 would be within the range. But we often don't think about that. And similarly with tactical pricing, how often, especially in the B2B SaaS world, it's the end of the quarter, the sales team is freaked out, and we go ahead and figure out, well, how low can we go to make this quarter's numbers? Or we're not really sure on what senior management wants us to do, so we go ahead and just start setting prices that way. So strategic pricing involves an integration of many diverse inputs. You have a lot of players. It's much more complicated than just sitting around a table, and also incorporating things like your cost, your value, the competition. There's a number of things you want to be looking at, and it can be challenging. Now, Zandra, I don't know, have we the poll, but I'd like to see either through the poll or through the chat where people are on the strategic to tactical pricing continuum.
Sure, yeah. So the question was there at the beginning, but I think I'm now sharing the results. I hope people can see it. You
Yeah.
can see what people filled in.
So there's a lot of people right here just eyeballing it. It's right around the middle here. And part of what I want to do next is share with you a framework and approach to start to thinking about pricing more strategically. And so this is the pricing pyramid that my firm has developed in our work with our many clients. And there's 5 levels, 5 steps to becoming a strategic pricing hero. In this session today, we only have a little bit less than an hour. We're talking about the foundation of creating value, understanding the value we create. Hans will shortly give examples of price structure. If we had more time, we'd get into the top 3 levels, but in reality, where most companies jump to is figuring out what's the price level without doing the hard work of looking at the value creation or the price structure. And the value creation, we gave an example of understanding the dead squirrel story. What problems are we solving? What's it worth to the customer to solve that problem? Once again, if you know you're saving them a $40,000 rebuild, the pricing is a lot more palatable than if that's not the other alternative. You also want to look at segmentation, not personas, because most of the time our personas lie, but we want to look at segmentation based on need, based on problems that they need to have solved. In my case here, I had a god-awful smell that I needed to get rid of, or else I would have to rebuild my porch. My neighbor, on the other hand, would have an issue with, he wouldn't pay anything for it because he didn't have the problem, despite the fact that we are the same age, both have the same number of kids, same size house, etc. We wouldn't really look at that. So this is something, if you really want to become a strategic pricing hero, we'll send you the slides, take a picture of this, but this is really the key process you want to look at. After you understand the value, then you want to look at the price structure. This is the unit of measure that you could be looking at. This could be the product, how you bundle your products together. This could be where you do some competitive analysis. But give you an example about units of measure, was working with a company that provided software solutions to manage large warehouses. They were pricing based on users. That was their unit of measure, per user pricing. But what we realized is that the true value and the value different based on the size of the warehouse. So we moved from warehousing and pricing per user to pricing per square foot. So we would have price tiers at $10,000 a square foot, $100,000, 100,000 square feet, 1,000,000 square feet and above. So, and then we can look at pricing policy. This gets into how do you set discounts? What flexibility to give the salespeople a discount? And after you do those first 3 levers, then you do what everybody really calls pricing. which is setting the price. Do we charge $1 a gallon, $2 a gallon, $10,000 a square foot, whatever it is we're looking at. And then finally, are we providing our sales team with the training and the tools to effectively defend and explain our pricing? And yet most of us focus primarily on, hey, we're picking the price. The price is $5 a user. We're all set, without really thinking through the first 3 steps in the pyramid. So, and then you're probably thinking, whoa, this is really hard. This requires a lot of work. And I happen to be a Tom Hanks fan, actually. Who isn't a Tom Hanks fan? But this is from the movie A League of Their Own, a great baseball movie about the Women's Baseball League. And Tom, as the manager, had this great quote: if it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. Talking about baseball. The hard is what makes it great. And so, yes, it's hard to go through the strategic pricing pyramid. Yes, it's hard to build a consensus on this. Yes, it's hard to get the data. But if you do this, you'll make a heck of a lot more money. Your product will be far more successful if you put in the effort. Because if it was hard, everybody would do it. And because it's hard, very few people do. So before I turn this over to Hans to he'll talk some examples of pricing structure and pricing models, some good and not so good. Like your thoughts on how can you in your organization use the strategic pricing pyramid? Put something in the chat, or feel free to raise your hands and share your thinking with us. Or can you? Okay. All right, let me call Rajesh. Let me call on you. And by the way, we'll talk offline. We're due to catch up offline.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do when you look at this pyramid, what are your thoughts? How, you've been a senior guy at various organizations. How could you see this having an impact, and how could it be used?
Yeah, I think this is a great framework, Neil. I think the fundamental thing is to spend time and energy and thinking on the foundational aspects of the pricing and not jumping to the top, right? So really thinking about how your company or your product adds value to the customer. And that's actually quite a nuanced activity, right? So you've got to actually go out and, like you say, get out of your skin and be in the customer's world to understand how they perceive the products vis-a-vis the competition. So that bottom foundation is so critical to really setting up strategic pricing, because when you say strategic, it means long term. It's not like you set something and you change it next year, right? So you got to spend some time on the bottom of this pyramid, time and probably budget, right? Sometimes you have to do global market research to understand what your product really, what is the true differentiation that's perceived in the market. So that's the challenge not the challenge, but that's a challenge and an opportunity. Companies really, would like to go to the top of that pyramid, but really, I think doing that bottom is so critical to the entire pricing strategy.
Yeah, Rajesh, very well put. Part of it is that it's too easy to jump to a discussion on what we should charge without doing the first 3 rungs. And often I find this is an important tool to set expectations with management or others who are involved, who expect it to be just pick a price. What we don't do is do the hard stuff. And this is a way or a tool that you can use internally to say to your management, this is going to take a while. but we'll be a lot more profitable if we do this work. So thank you. So any other questions or comments about the pricing pyramid? Yes. Yeah, Dustin, could you share with what you just put in the chat?
Yeah, we have a lot of examples where there's companies who are very low price, low end of the market, and there's always a pull to, maybe we need to go down to that price level. But then when we do research with our ideal customers, we find that our ideal customers are never even considering those vendors as options. And so they really shouldn't be factoring into our pricing strategy at all unless they start to end up on these short lists.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind, in the example of NW Pest, the competition, I wasn't calling around all these pest companies and getting multiple quotes. I just needed the problem solved. So really their competition was a $40,000 investment. So they had a big ceiling, if that was really the case. That was a big ceiling in order to price. So I wasn't, like I said, I didn't go online and say pest companies near me. So it's very important to get this right. And I see there's a question about where do you start, Catherine? And I would say very simply identifying your customers' dead squirrels that you remove and the value to them of removing the dead squirrels is the way that we recommend you start. Of course, topic for another session is how do you find the dead squirrels and how do you go dead squirrel hunting, if you will, is a topic for another session, but that's really where you start. So let's move forward to this here. I'd like to call up Hans now. And I talked a lot about the first rung of the pricing pyramid, which is value understanding, value creation. Hans is going to share some best practices and not so best practices around structuring your prices, which is the second rung of the pyramid. Hans, great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the first, that is a list. I will not go through all of that. I just want to share with you what you can research on your own and to understand. But back to the value creation. So I am going through this in my company right now, where we need to find the dead squirrels, because my company is talking a lot about features and how amazing our products are. But we did not really spend the hard work on understanding the needs of our customers. So, and that is really hard work to understand and requires a lot of research, but you need to do it. Otherwise, you can't do a good pricing. We ended up actually change our pricing structure already because we realized that some of our pricing was not aligned with the value we create for our partners. So coming back, so that's about value creation. The second lever here is, okay, what price structures to use. I will go through two price structures today. One about the value-based pricing, and one is the dynamic pricing. To give you an example of good and the bad. And then here's a list you can go through for further research. If you please move on to the next slide. I would like to give you a very popular example of how value-based pricing is done right. Salesforce. Salesforce is actually doing a quite good job in how they price. Thinking about, let's say, the $500 per user per month. It sounds pretty large number, and if you have a relatively large sales organization, this can add up. But you have to have in mind that the value of Salesforce is that you get the deals done, right? So think about the sales reps having a quota of 1 million or 2 million to deliver. The $500 you spend to manage this is nothing compared to that. And that's one thing. So Salesforce actually successfully implemented value-based pricing. by aligning the pricing with the actual benefit it delivers to the organizations they serve. So what they did, the perceived value of Salesforce is not determined by the price per user. It is determined by what you can achieve with a good management of your sales and marketing organization, and that is the value they deliver. They have here also, as you can see on the screen, they have a tiered pricing reflecting differentiated value. So for some organizations, less is okay. For some other organizations, they do want to go more advanced. So, and they differentiate here the value, and this is what is reflected in the packages. Also, it's tailored to the business needs. If you know Salesforce, you can have a lot of modules to be added into the solution. And with that, they can tailor to the needs. And they know exactly what they deliver, and they know exactly that the switching cost to another solution is very, very high. You are not changing your CRM system usually. It is very painful. It doesn't add much value to do so. It's just taking time and resources from your organization away from doing business. So, and that is why they price it this way. And also they are innovating. They add more stuff over time, and they innovate in the way how to manage things. So that's a good example. Let's go to the bad example, how not to do value-based pricing. I selected here Reworks as an example because they actually did a lot of things wrong in their approach. First of all, Reworks as a company misjudged how B2B clients actually perceive the value. So they aggressively expanded, and they had a premium pricing model. So what is wrong with that? First of all, they overestimated the value and the perceived value of the B2B market. So the B2B market is not willing to pay a premium for offices. That's one thing. Also, there was a mismatch of the financial realities of the target customers. Either the startups they targeted, they do not have money to have fancy offices, or the larger companies, they have much more negotiation power. So if they rent a whole house or a whole floor, they can negotiate prices much better. So, and then there's also a low barrier for competition. So in each area they were, the local landlords, they could easily compete by adding either value to their office spaces or by negotiating the costs. So it was relatively easy for competition. And they scaled their business without sufficient demand from the market. So that is why all this pricing didn't work, specifically the premium pricing, and almost collapsed the company. So you see here what you can do wrong if you do the pricing wrong by not understanding the end customers. Let's move on to the dynamic pricing, where I want to show you a good example. AWS, actually. AWS is doing a quite good job in how they price their AWS offer. And they do this by usage-based pricing. So for everything you buy there, it's a pay-per-use. So also there are specific instances, they call this spot instances, where variable pricing based on the current demand on the platform is taken into account. They also have in their dynamic pricing, they have something what is called reserved pricing. You can actually lock in a price for a certain amount of time for a workload you know you will need. So you can detach a little bit from the pay-per-use. And also, they do a quite good job in the geographic and market-based adjustments. So you have all the data centers in the world. They are slightly different priced based on the location, based on the available services. And on top, they also have discount pricing and elastic pricing in place. So you can actually tailor your consumption by what you really need. So it does have some of the risks, and most likely there is a risk that you pay too much as an end customer. They know this, and this is why they introduced this reserve pricing, for example. And they serve with this pricing a diverse range of B2B customers, from startups to large enterprise, by offering a very flexible and cost-efficient solution tailored to the usage of the platform. So that's a good example. Let's go into a bad example of how you should not do this. Some of you may remember, if you are in the retail space or if you're selling goods, that FedEx and all the large carriers, they introduced a fuel surcharge. And how they did this is actually when you send as a B2B a package, there was always a line item saying, okay, some fuel surcharge is required. And the problem with that was it wasn't transparent how this is calculated. There was just a number appearing on your invoice or actually on the specific package, and it was basically unpredictable and uncontrollable costs for the end customer. And also the large carriers, they made one mistake. They misused this surcharge as a profit maker, because when the fuel prices fell significantly, the surcharge didn't always decrease in the same manner. So it was a perception of exploitation from the end customer. So they felt, that is not really a cost mitigation or cost recovery mechanism. This is something to make more profit for the large carriers. So, and then also the price was just too volatile. Every day a different price, different surcharge, so nobody could really predict. So it ended up actually that they stopped this or they introduced fixed surcharges, because there was a lot of complaints in the market about that. And also it was highly dependable on external factors. So for the end customers and the large carriers was not really sustainable model. There was a lot of, brand destroyed among the B2B space. So many of the companies started to look for alternatives to the large carriers, because they needed predictable costs. And that damage is hard to recover in future. Okay, let's move on. That was the 4 examples how to do and not to do. And about pricing models and structure, I want just to give you a primer. I'm not going through all of it, but my point is here, actually you can compare different pricing models, and you can actually calculate what the difference is by having a couple of numbers. The picture you see here, the black picture you see here, is how packaging versus pay-per-use you could benefit from by knowing what the real usage is of the customer and what the perceived or the expectation of usage is from the end customer. And by knowing these 2 factors, you can price your packages in a way that you benefit in both ways, either under usage or over usage of your package. So I just want to give you this primer that different models are comparable, and it's actually a math you can do. Okay, so I'm forced to go a little bit faster. Choosing the right pricing model, how to do it. It highly depends on the strategic objective you want to achieve. So what is your goal? Do you want to penetrate the market? Do you are you in a high competition environment? What is the maturity level of your organization in understanding the customer needs? How much of the value creation and the pain points and the dead squirrels you know about your end customers? And understanding the perceived value and the attached cost will give you a lot of information about what is the zone you can work in, from your cost to the ceiling, and where to position your pricing in it. I think that's it from my end.
Okay, Hans, thank you very much. Let me just land the plane now. Part of it is there's another program from BPMA, the Product Executive Forum. This is a group that Hans is part of. We meet monthly, virtually, the second Friday of the month, to really have deep dives into topics just as what we went into here: strategic pricing. How do you get your team to be more strategically priced? How do you get your team to be more customer focused? Many topics, working with your CEO, working with your board. It is geared for people who are in the VP or product management or product marketing role, currently right now employed in those roles, or higher. We have several CPOs and even other C-suite members. If you obviously you're currently working in the role, and if you are a director level in a company of more than 1,000 people, then we'll consider director levels above. So it's going, if Zandra or Hillary, if you could put into the chat how they can find the PEF page off the BPMA, bostonproducts.org website, that'd be awesome. If you have any kind of trouble finding it and you feel that you qualify, you can reach out to me at nbarron@barronstrategic, or reach out to me through LinkedIn. Hans is also available to continue the conversation as well. There's an awful lot we didn't get into, the whole notion of how do you enable your team or yourself to find dead squirrels, and how do you articulate those? How do you incorporate competitive insights into your pricing strategy? There's so much more we could have got into at this point. But it's been great to have as many people here as we have. We're kind of blown away by the high number of attendees. Also, we started to talk about market segmentation. I had the privilege of getting published in Harvard Business Review last year on urgency of needs. You can email me for a copy. You can Google it. But we go into a lot in terms of sophisticated customer segmentation. So at that point, I'll turn it back over to my colleague at the BPMA, Zandra. Any final comments?
Thank you so much. This was so interesting, Neil and Hans. Thank you so much for sharing it. So if you want to know also more about a specific topic, please fill in the survey. It's in the chat, because there is a place to mention some topics if you're interested in it, and we can see how we can help to give more information. We're also going to share the recording, this slide deck with all of the resources as well. So you will get all that information from us via the email later on. So other than that, it only leaves me then to thank everyone, and to thank you, Neil and Hans, for all of this today. We really appreciate all of the efforts and the information. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to thank the BPMA team to pull this together. Running these events is not an insignificant amount of work, and everybody who is involved with the BPMA is a volunteer. So they're really dedicated to pulling on these events, but really building the Boston product community. So I just want to say thanks to the BPMA, and have a happy Halloween, everybody.
Yes, happy Halloween. Hope to see you soon in another event or another activity.
Thank you
Have
very
a good
much.
day, everyone.